Hello everyone, Juxtaposition here. Today's video we're going to concentrate on my rebuttal of the steroid beauty pageant winner, former fake governor of California, Hollywood, CIA, action figure icon, Arnold Schwarzenegger, who comes from a German family from Austria and has Nazi affiliations. His family is Nazi affiliated. And I especially love to listen to the vitriolic hate speech coming from a Nazi regarding anti-Semitism, which seems to be his rant disguised as color of skin and religion, when we're just talking about, the Jewish people who control Hollywood social engineering and the life science industry and untested jabs and the military-industrial intelligence complex. That's who the enemy is. So it's got nothing to do with skin color or religion. It has to do with, are you trying to murder people? Are you trying to collect information on them? Are you rolling out a techno-enslavement system? Because that would be the enemy. And that would include bankers, private bankers, money laundering bankers. Anyway, let me just read to you what this crackpot, who's got a name that no one can spell correctly, Arnold Schwarzenegger, took to social media today with a 12-minute video addressing the rising instances of hate crimes in America, and specifically addressing those committing or considering committing hate crimes, or anyone who hates others because of their religion or color of their skin or their gender. Boy, he's really covering everything except Jewishness. His message is blunt, calling those who embrace hate losers, but also telling those same people, I care about you and I urge a different path. That sounds like a mixed message, Arnold. Is that applied linguistics or is that your own dumb stupidity? I have a feeling you didn't write that speech, this 12-minute vitriolic pronouncement to hate people who hate Jews. I don't hate Jews. I hate Jewish people who are running Hollywood, okay? I don't know if hatred is the right word. I want them removed. I want them removed from their positions of authority, and I want them disappeared, just like I want them disappeared out of the private banking industry, and I want them out of the military-industrial complex, and I want them out of the pharmaceutical-industrial complex. Oh, God. I will post this. It's too hard to read this without feeling nauseous. Anyway, basically Arnold is saying that he hates people who hate people. That's the gist of it. He posted 12 minutes on there. Obviously, his Jewish puppet masters must have told him to put that out there, because I don't think he's intelligent enough to make any decisions. Plus, he doesn't have the authority to post anything on social media. That's one thing I've learned. Social media is 95% controlled, if not 99% controlled. Anybody that has large viewers and large subscribers is under clandestine service controlled. And of course, who's going to believe anything Arnold Schwarzenegger says? If it was Ronald Reagan, I wouldn't believe him either. I mean, they're under this control of the Screen Actors Guild. They will not have their films distributed. They won't get paid royalties. And we know that Arnold Schwarzenegger works for Jewish people. He works for Andrew Vajna, whose real name is Andres Weidman. In other words, you have a Jewish person who was born in Istanbul, Turkey, whose real name is Andres Weidman, who changed his name to Andrew Vajna to conceal the fact that he's Jewish, and he works with Mario Kassar at Carol Co. Pictures, or used to, and they produced Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator 2. They also were pornographers. Their number one money source was Noel C. Bloom of Canoga Park and West Hills, and where they produced pornography films, Caballero home videos, and they work with Andrew Oliver Silverstein Stone, to produce his movie The Doors, which was a dramatization of the story of Jim Morrison that deleted the whole section about Jim Morrison's father being a rear admiral in the United States Navy during the Bay of Tonkin incident. So it's kind of a concealment of how the Vietnam War started. Oliver Stone likes to pretend like he's an expert on the Vietnam War since he taught children to speak English in Saigon. Those would be CIA children, right? Children of CIA parents, contractor parents. That's what I would assume, who had relations with the locals, the children's parents. So what I wanted to tell you is I don't take advice from steroid addicts. I don't take advice from Hollywood actors and social engineers, and I certainly don't take advice from the governor of California. I don't listen to Gavin Newsom. I don't listen to Jerry Moonbeam Brown. I didn't listen to Moonbeam Brown's, father before him. I didn't listen to Ronald Reagan, and I don't listen to Arnold Schwarzenegger. So with that, I'm just going to say, Arnold, get lost and stay off my channel. You live in the same neighborhood as the Will Rogers State Park, which is across the street from where the people who run you and own you ran Charlie Miles Maddox and put him up on a 5.88 acre hunting lodge for Will Rogers, a 5-bedroom, 13-room estate property with an Olympic-sized swimming pool located at 14400 Sunset Boulevard. And there's Neil Young, and there's Dina Martin, Dean Martin's daughter Dina, and there's Charlie Manson playing the guitar with Neil Young at the pool, taking in the vibe with the Altadena Dairy delivering eggs and milk and chocolate milk every day to this party house, which the media told you that belonged to Dennis Wilson. Wrong! It did not. And Dennis Wilson was hardly ever there. He was doing 142 concert dates that year of 1968. So he wasn't around. It wasn't his house. He did not own it. It's owned by the Hollywood people, the same people that own Arnold Schwarzenegger, who own his films, who own him personally. That's who owns 14400 Sunset Boulevard, the Will Rogers home. All right, what else can I tell you? Well, I can tell you a lot of things. What I wanted to say is that our media, our fake media, they make little lies and then they make ginormous lies. So let's talk about some of that and how that could happen. Because, like my video yesterday was about the Zodiac killing and the Zodiac killings. But I'm here to tell you there never was a Zodiac. There never was a Zodiac. That was produced in Hollywood in 1939. On September 8th, 1939, Hollywood released a film, Charlie Chan at Treasure Island, where a character portrayed by Cesar Romero portrayed Frank Rendini, who's a magician who performed at the World's Fair at Treasure Island in San Francisco, Yerba Buena Island. And he had his real job was as a psychologist operating in Presidio Heights, San Francisco, where he called himself Dr. Zodiac. And that was where the Zodiac concept was created, because this Dr. Zodiac, besides masquerading as a psychologist, also robbed and burglarized his clients, wealthy women that would come to see him about their boredom. And he murdered some of those clients. And this was the message that Hollywood sent us in 1939, for those of us that were alive, that there is a killer loose in Presidio Heights, San Francisco, and he calls himself Zodiac. And then 30 years and 33 days later, Paul Stine, a Jewish cab driver who's age 38, but the media tells you he's 29, and he's shot in the head with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol, probably a Browning, and he walks calmly 2.5 blocks to Spruce Street and into a Jewish playground called the Julius Kahn Playground, adjacent to officer housing where Sharon Tate's father resides in the Presidio Army Base, never to be seen or heard from again. But there is plenty of Zodiac messaging. We have Melvin Belli gets involved with Jim Dunbar on KGO Radio and ABC affiliate KGO Television, and they put on a show and they have a fake Zodiac call-in guest, and oh boy, they really amped it up, along with the Jewish-controlled Chronicle, San Francisco Chronicle newspaper, and the Roman Catholic newspaper William Randolph Hearst Empire, the Examiner, the afternoon paper. They just had a field day with this Zodiac psychops. But it certainly looked like to me it was a military army intel officer who picked up Paul Stine, yellow cab company taxi driver, 3 miles from where he was shot in the head at 3898 Washington Street at the corner of Cherry Street and Washington Street on the northeast corner at 3898 Washington Street. Anyway, the media told us immediately that Paul Stine was 29 years old, that he was shot in the head with a .38 caliber pistol. Both of those are lies. He's 38 years old. Okay, he's almost 39 years old. His photographs make him look 59 years old. He was shot with a 9mm semi-automatic pistol. His killer walked calmly into the United States Army base, the Presidio. The media didn't mention that Sharon Tate's father, who's grieving from the loss of his daughter due to an Operation Gladio NATO attack in Beverly Hills just 2 months earlier, they didn't mention that Paul Tate, Colonel Paul Tate of the United States Army, lives 3 blocks from the murder scene of the Paul Stine taxi. They didn't mention that. You know, it might help your story out a little bit. They didn't mention that Dianne Feinstein lived in that neighborhood where Paul Stine was murdered. They didn't mention that Nancy Pelosi and Paul Pelosi live in that neighborhood, the Presidio Heights neighborhood. The neighborhood that was projected to us by the Hollywood film creators of Charlie Chan at Treasure Island in September 1939. 30 years and 33 days. 33 days after Charlie Chan and Treasure Island told you about a killer named Zodiac operating in Presidio Heights, there's a killing in Presidio Heights. 30 years and 33 days later. Anyway, then the media had a lot of confused messages about, did Paul Stine pick up his cab fare at the St. Francis Hotel, or was it the Fairmont Hotel on Nob Hill? Well, who cares? Who cares? Because it's exactly 3 miles from the Bohemian Club at 624 Taylor Street, which is across, it's like 100 feet from the St. Francis Hotel. The Olympic Club and the Bohemian Club are adjacent to the St. Francis Hotel. Now, they're across Post Street from the St. Francis Hotel complex. But the distance from the St. Francis Hotel or the Olympic Club or the Bohemian Club to where Paul Stine bled out into the curb at 3898 Washington Street is 3 miles exactly. It's 3 miles exactly. The distance from the Fairmont Hotel or the Flood Mansion or the Masonic Auditorium, which are all located on the same zip code property atop California Street on Nob Hill, the distance from any one of those 3 places, the distance from there to where Paul Stine was murdered is exactly 3 miles. And the distance from the Fairmont Hotel to the St. Francis Hotel or to the Bohemian Club is 0.4 of a mile. Okay? So it's like 620 yards. It's not that different of a zip code. Okay? So what I'm trying to tell you is the media really tries to create a lot of chaos and confusion with their reporting, which, in my opinion, you should just ignore the media because they lie or they use applied linguistics, which is lying. We can ask Noam Chomsky about that. He is an expert on lying, and he's an expert on applied linguistics. Okay? And then, or they do little lies, and then they do big lies, like Pearl Harbor surprise sneak attack. No, it wasn't. It was a surprise for those people who were killed. It was a surprise to them, but it wasn't a surprise to Navy intelligence. Wasn't surprising to the bankers who funded it, who had to pay for all the weapon systems. Wasn't surprise to them, not at all. They don't deal with surprises. They deal with planned events, which are well thought out in advance. Some people call them conspiracies. I call them plots. All right, so in direct respect to Arnold Schwarzenegger, okay, here's some anti-Semitic. I'm sure that he would consider this anti-Semitic. I don't. I call it, does correlation equal causation? Well, I don't know. You decide. You decide. That's who should be making these decisions. The viewers of my channel, not some Hollywood actor who's reading a script for 12 minutes telling you about hatred and vitriolic lunacy. A steroid relic of a beauty pageant called Mr. Olympia. Does anyone really watch men take steroids so they can pose in, string bikinis? I mean, what a fruitcake that guy is, Arnold Schwarzenegger. And he's lifting weights at Muscle Beach, which is one parking lot away from the CIA drug dealing Straight Satan's Motorcycle Club. I wonder if he got his steroids over there. I wonder if Danny DiCarlo knows Arnold Schwarzenegger, since they both operated in the same parking lot. That's where the steroids came in, probably, was at that parking lot next to the Straight Satan's Motorcycle Club in Venice Beach, Muscle Beach, right there. Arnold Schwarzenegger knows. He knows where One Clubhouse Way is. All right, so California is the place you ought to be, so they loaded up the trucks and they moved to Beverly, and some of them moved to Sand Hill Road, and some moved to Atherton, and some moved to Pacific Heights, and to Cliff, they moved to Russian Hill and Seacliff, and they moved to Tiburon and Belvedere in the case of Tom Perkins, and they moved out to Portola Valley from New York. And I'm going to give you some names, and 85% of the names I'm going to read you are Jewish names. Okay, I'll let you figure out who's who. Bill Graham, his real name is Wolf Grajanka. Okay, he came from the Bronx, even though originally he came from Berlin, Germany. And he's Jewish. Anyway, Bill Graham, Wolf Grajanka, he came out to San Francisco in 1965 to provide free concert promotions with money coming from private banking. Then we have Jerome Kohlberg. He came from New Rochelle, New York, the Bronx. And he founded KKR, which is some Bear Stearns people, which would be Henry Kravis, the barbarian at the gate, and George Roberts, and all three Jewish men from Bear Stearns, and they formed KKR Private Banking in 1972 at 2800 Sand Hill Road. All three of those men are Jewish. It's a Jewish private bank, which is code for clandestine service funding bankers. All right? And simultaneously to that, Don Valentine founded Sequoia Capital at the same address, 2800 Sand Hill Road. He went to Fordham University in the Bronx. I don't know if he's Jewish or not. I suspect he probably is Jewish. But there's nothing known about his parents. Doug Leone later joined. He's from Genoa, Italy, a port city. And then he moved to Mount Vernon, New York, which is the Bronx, within 5 miles of Fordham University. And he joins Don Valentine at Sequoia Capital at 2800 Sand Hill Road. And it's private banking, clandestine services. And between those two companies, and Kleiner Perkins, Eugene Kleiner, who came from Vienna, Austria, but then he moved to Manhattan, New York. So he came from Manhattan, New York to Sand Hill Road, and he founded Kleiner Perkins in 1972 at 2750 Sand Hill Road. All right, so now you got three private bankers set up in using the same parking lot, more or less, at Stanford University at 2800 Sand Hill Road and 2750 Sand Hill Road. Okay, that's very close. And two of them were founded in 1972, and KKR was founded in 1976, to be 100% accurate here. But they all know each other. They're all doing the same private, secretive banking. And they brought you Oracle Sales Corporation, which sold Ampex's CIA database. It's a CIA database constructed by Ampex in Redwood City. Then they had to sell it to the public once they got it beta tested, and they created SAP in Germany and Oracle sales company in America to roll that database out. And that's collecting all your DNA from your PCR tests, all right? Anyway, they brought you them. They brought you Sun Microsystems. They brought you Google. They brought you YouTube. They brought you Zoom. They brought you Facebook. They brought you Amazon. Do you see a pattern here, people? They brought you Cisco Systems. They brought you FTX with Sam Bankman-Fried. I believe he's Jewish, right? Caroline Ellison, she's probably Jewish. Larry Ellison, who's the CEO, chairman of Oracle, he's Jewish, right? So there's a lot of Jewish bankers, and there's a lot of Jewish principals in clandestine service funded companies, but it all emanated from the Bronx, New Rochelle, Mount Vernon. That's who were the private bankers. Here's some other names. Rob Reiner. Remember Meathead from the Archie Bunker show? Well, he's Jewish, and he came from the Bronx. Remember Mark Lane, who wanted to tell you what happened with John Kennedy, the John F. Kennedy assassination? The CIA did it? Really? You think? This is for the people that didn't believe in the Warren Commission. They flew in Mark Lane. You know, he never mentioned who paid his hotel bills or paid for his grocery bills or his dinner tabs, and who booked his guests. Who books your guests, Howard Stern? Who books your guests, Joe Rogan? Who books your guests? Right? Who books their guests? Look at the guest list. They're all controlled. Oh, like 100%. Anyway, Mark Levin, his real name is Levin. It's not Lane. He's a Jewish man from the Bronx, and he changed his name from Lane to Levin to sound less Jewish, I guess. His name is Mark Levin. He changed his name to Mark Lane. Then he wanted to tell you about JFK. Then he wanted to tell you about Jim Jones. He's Jim Jones's lawyer. He wants to tell you about Jonestown, which never existed. There's the People's Temple Agricultural Project. And there's Mark Lane carrying a bag of cash, and he escapes Jonestown during the massacre of 918 people, and he doesn't get killed. That means he got flown out on a CIA plane. That's what that means. All right, so you got Alan Dershowitz. He's from Brooklyn. You got Jerry Seinfeld, the comedian. He's Jewish. He's from Brooklyn. You got Larry David. He wrote for Jerry Seinfeld. He's from Brooklyn. Then he hosted the Larry David Show, or Curb Your Enthusiasm, HBO. He's from Brooklyn. Larry David, Jewish from Brooklyn. Jerry Seinfeld, Jewish from Brooklyn. Lawrence Schiller wrote the book The Killing of Sharon Tate, copywritten on January 2nd, 1970. That means that he wrote that book in under 30 days, because nobody knew anything about the killing of Sharon Tate until Paul Caruso, a mob attorney, and Richard Caballero, who works for the District Attorney's Office of Los Angeles, beat a confession, a phony fake confession out of Susan Atkins around the Thanksgiving weekend of 1969. And there is no way you could just throw a book together in 30 days with no research whatsoever. Lawrence Schiller, a Jewish gentleman from Brooklyn, New York. Then I got Lenny Bruce. Remember the comedian Lenny Bruce who died at age 40? Well, he's a Jewish man from Long Island, from Mineola, Long Island. Harvey Milk, the first openly gay man to be voted as a supervisor of the city of San Francisco. Well, he's a Jewish man from Long Island, Woodmere to be specific. Harvey Milk, United States Navy, thrown out of the Navy for being a homosexual and completely controlled and set up in a camera shop on Castro Street. Quick like a bunny rabbit. He was only in San Francisco for 4.5 years, and they've canonized him. Just like they've canonized Bill Graham, Wolf Gerjonka. They named the San Francisco Civic Auditorium the Bill Graham Civic Auditorium. And that's not even his real name. That's a CIA name pulled out of a New York phone book. And that's the name of our Civic Auditorium in San Francisco. It's named after a CIA name. And Harvey Milk, portrayed by Sean Penn, a completely owned and controlled fake actor. Sean Penn from Fast Times at Ridgemont High School, who happens to be also a drunk driver speeder over the center line with Robin Wright sitting in the passenger seat, almost killing 3 of my friends over there in Spooksville, Marin County, Kentfield, right near the Ross Valley Players off Sir Francis Drake Boulevard in Marin County, near the town of Ross. True story. Eugene Kleiner, again, came from Vienna, but then to Manhattan and then to Sand Hill Road. Oliver Silverstein changed his name to Stone. Oliver Silverstein came from Manhattan. Albert Laverne, medical doctor psychiatrist for MK Ultra, came out of Manhattan, New York. Ben Bugsy Siegel came out of Manhattan, New York, the Lower East Side. Ben Bugsy Siegel. Meyer Lansky, a Jewish gentleman, not his real name, came out of the Lower East Side, Manhattan, New York. That's Meyer Lansky. Jose Menendez, he came out of Havana, Cuba, originally at age 16. Then he bounced around. He got an athletic scholarship for University of Illinois. Then he ended up going to Queens College in Queens. And so really his track into working at the container intermodal business in Cicero, Illinois, and then to Hertz Rent-A-Cars, the chief financial officer, and then operating officer, chief operating officer for RCA Music and Porn, and then later CEO, chairman of the board of live entertainment for the same people that Arnold Schwarzenegger worked for when he produced Terminator 2. It was produced by Carolco Pictures, which again is Andres Weidman, who goes by Andrew Vajna, and Mario Casar. They produced Oliver Silverstein's The Doors film. They produced Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator 2. And they're in the porn business with Noam Bloom. So Arnold Schwarzenegger is sort of in the porn business. I mean, he does business with pornography producers. Yeah. I don't know if he mentioned that in his 12-minute clip. I don't think he did. Don't feel bad. I mean, we had Rambo on the board of directors of Carolco Pictures. You know, Sylvester Stallone. He started his career as a porn star in New York. Sylvester Stallone in Hell's Kitchen, New York. He did a porn film. Sylvester Stallone, Rambo, Rocky. And he's on the board of directors of the company that produced Arnold Schwarzenegger's Terminator 2. You see any kind of an affiliation here between Jewish people and Italians and Catholics and Nazis? I do. The Nazis and these Jewish people that are running Hollywood, they're thick as thieves. They are. They're like Siamese twins. So when we hear anti-Semitism, you should hear Nazism, okay? Because it's the same thing. All right, so then we got Frank Sturgis, not his real name, Frank Fiorini. He's from Philadelphia. Hey, and guess who else is from there? Noam Chomsky, a Jewish man who's a professor at MIT for decades. Now he's off to, I think, New Mexico. Anyway, he's an expert in applied linguistics, which is the art of weaponizing the English language. And he's from Philadelphia area. And so is William Link, that produced and created the Columbo detective series and also Murder, She Wrote. And Richard Levinson, who also partnered with William Link. They're both Jewish from Philadelphia. And so you got Frank Sturgis. Oh, and then we got Jim Cramer, who brought you Mad Money on CNBC. And he promoted FTX, Sam Bankman-Fried. He promoted him. I don't think that worked out very well. So, and he's Jewish from Philadelphia. Jim Cramer from the north border of Philadelphia. Jim Cramer, Noam Chomsky, William Link, Richard Levinson, Frank Sturgis, who's a career CIA, United States Marine CIA operative. That's 5 people out of Philadelphia. 4 of them are Jewish. Then we have Chicago. Mickey Cohen came from Chicago. He replaced Ben Siegel in Beverly Hills when Ben Siegel got shot 9 times with an M1 semi-automatic military rifle in Beverly Hills 90210. Then we had Mickey Cohen. And Jack Ruby, whose real name is Jacob Rubenstein, he came out of Chicago, Cicero, Illinois, where Jose Menendez worked for a while, where Paul Marcinkus, who was the president of the Bank of Vatican, where he came out of, where Al Capone came out of. I'm not counting them. Mickey Cohen, Jacob Rubenstein, they came out of Chicago. Anyway, that's a lot of names. In fact, that's 27 names. And to be real specific, I can't figure out the heritage of 4 of the people, so I'm going to subtract them off. 23 of those 27 are Jewish people from back east. Well, a couple from Chicago. But to be specific, 2 from Chicago. But the rest are from the Philadelphia or Bronx, Brooklyn, New York areas. And that's 85% of the 27 names I just mentioned are Jewish. Now, does that mean that Jewish people boss Arnold Schwarzenegger? Yes, that's exactly what that means. So if they said, stand in the corner and squawk like a chicken, Arnold, he'll do it. He'll do it. If they say, put Sharon Tate's sister, Deborah, on your shoulders and pull her bra off, and so she's topless, he'll do it. I got a photo. I know he will do it. If he wants to have an affair with his housekeeper, he'll do it. Absolutely. You could ask his wife, Maria Shriver. That takes me to Robert Kennedy, who's married to Cheryl Hines. I think it's his 3rd wife, because his wives have a tendency of dying right away or getting divorced. Anyway, Cheryl Hines is 57 years old, and they promoted a party back on December 18th, 2021, where you had to have your vaccination paperwork or have a negative PCR test, or you couldn't come into their home. They used to live in CIA-controlled Malibu when they first got married, and lived at Point Dume, which is a CIA-controlled area. It's not in the colony, but it is still in a controlled area, monitored 24/7. And they were selling that home in 2017. So I don't know where they had this COVID party during the height of COVID in 2021, but they had a Hollywood party where you're supposed to be in compliance with the COVID protocols, which we all know those were preposterous protocols. Anyway, I wouldn't believe anything that Robert Kennedy Jr. ever says on vaccines or anything he says on environmental law. He promotes himself as an environmental lawyer, except he's never mentioned the chemtrails over my head, which has been gone over for over 101 consecutive days with thousands of metric tons of aluminum oxide and titanium and lithium dumped on my head, and he hasn't said a word about that. So his silence on aluminum chemtrails tells you that is the algorithm of Google. Concealment of the truth and the promotion of poppycock. When you promote PCR as a test, when it is not, and you promote vaccines, which are unproven and have no definition of vaccine anywhere in their realm, an experimental jab, when you promote, you're promoting poppycock. That's disinformation. That is false information. That is mendacity. The concealment of the truth and the promotion of mendacity are the definition of propaganda, the ministry of propaganda. And that's what Robert Kennedy Jr. is. He's the chairman of the board. I heard he wants to run for president. Hey, Ron DeSantis is going to run for president, and Gavin Newsom's going to run for president. I think that's it. I think it's Gavin Newsom, who works for the CIA, and I think it's Ron DeSantis, who works for Navy Intelligence CIA, Office of Judge Advocacy, and Robert Kennedy, who's completely capitulated and surrendered to the CIA. So you got 3 CIA candidates who are going to run for president to replace the very capable Sleepy Joe Biden and the cackling cacophony of chaos vice president, Kamala Harris, sugar baby of Willie Brown, personal friends with Jim Jones of the People's Temple. That's my story for today. Hope you enjoyed it. Have a great rest of your week.